Hi, this is Sean O'Brien Smith, and you are watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com, the place where all the old rockers who've still got it in them can learn bass and have fun doing it. Only at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. I'm really excited about this interview. I've been looking forward to it ever since I started talking with Sean O'Brien Smith, who reached out to me recently. Sean, we did a feature story on in 2015, and then we did a video interview at the Summer NAMM show in 2016. Sean is a bassist, of course. He's a recording artist, an in-demand film composer, and he's performed and or recorded with darn near everybody. Country stars like Billy Ray Cyrus, Keith Urban, Darius Rucker, Winona, Kenny Rogers, Rascal Flatts, the Oak Ridge Boys, jazz artists Larry Carlton, Randy Brecker, Gerald Albright, Chuck Loeb, and fellow bassists Brian Bromberg, Esperanza Spalding, and Victor Wooten. Welcome, Sean O'Brien Smith. So great to have you back on our show at ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Absolutely. It's been way too long.
It has. Let's not wait so long before we do a follow-up, because knowing you, you're going to have some big-time far-out news to talk about.
I hope so.
Speaking of which, you have described your career as musically bizarre. Those are your words, not mine. And now it looks like your career has taken a turn in a direction that some might find unexpected. Tell me what's going on.
Musically bizarre would be absolutely correct. I ended up a few years ago. I left Nashville, moved to South Florida, which that in itself was a whole other vibe. And it's funny, the first year I was here, I kind of just basically took a break, barely played, for about a year, just kind of rebooted. And then through that, just started, listening to the culture down here, because you've got all the Latin influences, obviously the Afro-Cuban things here. And then I'd always enjoyed the New Age genre and just kind of started studying it a little more, figuring out if I wanted to get involved with it more. Stumbled across an artist that I got chatting with him. Next thing I knew, I was doing his entire record. And with that, it snowballed, and I am knee deep being a new age artist, which is as far as you can get away from country music Nashville as you can think.
Don't usually hear the terms snowball and Florida in the same thing.
That was about it.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you all about that, but it sounds like you decided to move there and then you were kind of looking around to see what was going on, where, instead of the opposite. What did you go there for the music scene or for some other reason?
So it was funny. I was looking, or went back and reviewed, just kind of when we talked last and listened to the interview, and I realized all the stuff I had going in 2016. And it was pretty much that following NAMM in 2017, I basically hit a wall. The burnout had really hit. And I was just like, okay, I'm not sure I want to do the Nashville thing anymore. Through that, my wife and I had been talking about Florida for years, because we're big Disney files. Plus, I just wanted to be near a beach. So she ended up having a job offer materialize down here. And I was like, you know what? I did all my bucket list stuff with Nashville. I had played with all the acts I wanted to. I'd played on the records, all that stuff. So I was like, I think I'm okay. So pretty much for that first year we were down here, I considered myself retired. I was, just kind of kicking back and listening and enjoying music. And that's really what kind of opened my ears back up, was the fact that now I was listening for fun again. And I hadn't done that for years. I was more or less listening for a paycheck. And my passion was coming back. So
that's interesting. Do you know Tim Smith? You must know Tim.
Oh, I know Tim well.
Yeah, well, I interviewed him about a year ago, and he did the opposite. He was down in Florida he was at the University of Miami for I don't know how long, and then he had a hankering to get back into Nashville, so he was very excited about that. You've done the opposite.
Well, and it was so funny because we were ships passing, because Tim was one of the first people I reached out to when I was down here. I'm like, hey, I'm here. We chatted and, kept trying to grab lunch or whatever. And then the next thing you know, it's like, hey, I'm going back. And I'm like, oh, bye, because I'm like, I'm okay down here. I'm still enjoying the beach.
I had very pleasant memories of Florida. I went to the University of Miami. I ended up living down in South Florida for 6 years. And
Nice.
when you mentioned Boca, I played all the shows, all the theaters, all the Latin stuff, all the Century Villages.
Oh, yeah.
I got to know, believe it or not, the toll booth operators on the Florida Turnpike. Honest to God.
Oh, that's
Hey,
fantastic.
where'd you work tonight? Oh, yeah, we played with the Ink Spots and Jerry Vale, or whoever else it was. So tell me, the record is called Musings of an Occasional Somebody, and you claim to have gone full new age. So tell me about, I've listened to the record. It's very easy on the ears. And there's a tune on there I particularly like. I like it all, but there's a tune called New Day that I especially like. So talk to me about the record itself.
So it kind of spawned off from working with, there's a guitar player on there that's featured quite a bit, and the guy's name is John Gregorius. What truly spawned all of this was I was driving the coast one day and heard John on Sirius XM Spa. And I was like, okay, this guy's hitting me where I live. Everything he was doing was resonating with me. Well, new age artists are kind of like a lot of other independent artists where I'm like, he's going to be managing himself, unless you're one of the old, like Wyndham Hill crew, unless you're Will Ackerman, you're not going to have management. So I took a chance and emailed him through his website. And I was just like, I love what you're doing. I want in. Oddly enough, the timing was perfect. He was getting ready to start a new record for for the label he was on. And I got in and did the whole record. Well, with the independent thing, I was like, I was really doing it for the joy of creating. So at that point, I'm like, look, if you're a budget constraint, I'm still in. You owe me tracks. So when it came time to do my record, I started calling in favors. And I'm like, all right, so you're in. So a lot of the record was started off with me and John kind of collaborating. He's signed to a label out in Oregon called Spotted Peccary. And it's kind of the old Wyndham Hill crew. You've got a lot of that same artist base. Once Wyndham Hill kind of diffused, they ended up on this label. Well, the next thing I know, I'm talking to Tom Eaton, who is Will Ackerman's right hand and stuff like that. So now I'm knee deep in the old Wyndham Hill crew. So it just kind of inspired me to go, you know what? It's time to do a new record anyway. Let's go ahead and go here. And I know you and I have talked before, I was doing film stuff quite a bit. So a lot of that mindset, because you're really going for imagery, it's like you said it, Grace, it's easy listening. That's kind of what you want. You want stuff that's intentional to be in the background. So
it's easy on the ears.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, with doing that, it was a good chance to, okay, I'm going to run with this and see what happens. And, I ended up at that point kind of following the same role model I did with John when I was listening to Spa, of going, all right, I liked him. Let's see if he answers an email. So I got 2 or 3 more artists and then found some other guys that I'd worked with in the past. But a lot of this particular record, people that listen to it, they're going to realize it's probably the least bass record I've ever done, because I'm actually playing bass most of the time. There's like one solo, but the rest of it was really a producer's record because I was calling all these other guys in, and I'm playing a lot of the keyboards. Most of the drum programming is me. I'm playing one of the instruments I discovered down here in South Florida. You may remember is the Quattro. And it's like, for bass players, it's great because it's tuned the same. It's B to G, just like a 5-string bass with octave strings. So it's like I adapted that. So, it ended up being all this other fun stuff. So I've been enjoying it and just running with it.
I could tell when we emailed recently. I could feel your exuberance come right through the email.
Oh, good.
When you mentioned New Age, I immediately thought of Windham Hill, and when I thought of Windham Hill, I immediately thought of Michael Manring. Is he on your radar at all?
Michael's actually been mentoring me quite a bit with this.
Okay.
So we had known each other kind of more occasional, and through a lot of things, oddly enough, one of the reasons I started really reaching out to him is once I started finding myself in his camp more and more, because we kind of knew each other, I kind of felt bad. So I immediately emailed Michael and went, "Hey, look, I'm not trying to snake your gigs." Because I was finding myself talking to artists that would either hire him or Tony Levin or Kayak Art, and I'm like, holy cow, I'm getting, my mentors, people I've always idolized, here I am getting considered to be on the same project. So I just wanted to make sure he and I didn't have an issue. And he's been 100% supportive of everything, and I loved your recent over 50 article because I've been having all kinds of back issue and all that stuff. And Michael's always done it. So it's like, he's giving me pointers on that. He's listened to all of the records and, he's heard early mixes of stuff, and he's been amazing all the way.
Well, that's great to hear. He's such a nice guy. I remember the first time I saw him, I said, why does he keep messing with his tuning? When does he get oh, okay, that's his thing. Actually, I shouldn't have said that. That's kind of embarrassing that I would think that, but no, it's very cool, very unique what he does. What about the new record? Any plans to promote it or tour it or perform or anything like that?
We're definitely in full promotion right now. It's already gone out for radio consideration, and I've got, there's major promos going out there. It's out with all the major new age, publications, this, that, and the other out there to see about reviews. So we'll see what the coming weeks are doing. There's a lot of it out there right now.
It's amazing how we can record by just sharing files. It doesn't matter, geography doesn't matter anymore, and
no,
don't even, time of day, and when do we get together and we meet at the studio and all that time. That doesn't even, all that kind of stuff doesn't even matter anymore, which is good. More good than not good, but I think it's very cool.
I definitely miss being in a room with people, but yeah, that convenience thing is just fantastic. It's like every one of these artists on this record, there's not a one of them sitting in Boca, I can tell you that.
Let's talk about your gear. What kind of basses are you playing? I know you're a longtime NS design guy. Why don't we start there?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's funny. I've been basically all but married to this one NXT5 that I got from NAD, and it's heavily involved now with this genre. I'm pretty much on it the bulk of the time, because if you can think about most of the stuff you heard, especially like what Michael did with Windham Hill, it's tons of fretless. Well, and then I got thinking about, okay, it's Michael, it's Tony, it's Kai. They've got their fretless voice. What can I do? So I'm pretty much leading with the NS most of the time. And then the other long time thing I've been doing is I've had my two signature model fretteds with Ribsky. And what we've done is we took one of my Ribskys, did the whole Jocko trick. We pulled the frets. He did the epoxy.
That was Jocko already in my mind. I knew where you were going with this.
Yeah. So we yanked all that in, and then he's hooked up with
like that boat epoxy and that whole.
Oh, yeah, you can take a hammer to my fretboard now and it'll be totally fine. But he did that, and then he's got another Polish friend of his that's doing these really killer preamps out of Poland called Gregory preamps. So I'm beta testing one of those in the fretless now, and it sounds incredible.
Ooh.
And then on top of that, I ended up with Ribsky's personal 6-string a few years ago. And I tell you what, I've never played this bass as equal. He used to sit in his shop when we were designing my signature models, and I'd play it and I'd try to con him out of it. And it took a few years, but I finally got it. So that's actually gotten to be the #1 electric. So between the NS and then the Ribsky 6, those are the go-tos.
Where is he based, Ribsky?
South of Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now the good part is he was just here. He came down. He was ready for a beach weekend too, because obviously Nashville's been cold. So I get a text, "Hey, I'm coming down." So we had a long weekend with him, and it was
Oh,
neat, man, the Jocko thing, because you may have done this when you lived down here, but we actually went over to Jocko's grave and went over to Jocko Pastorius's park. So
yeah. No, he was still alive when I was down there. Well, actually, no, he did die. I saw him the night the accident happened. I had been at his house in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, I was there right in the 80s, from 84
right.
to 80, I was there. So, but I was at the Santana concert when Alfonso Johnson got up to play a solo, and I see somebody jumped up on the stage and went over Alfonso's head like this, as if to say to the audience, "Hey, give it up for Alfonso." And then they dragged him off, and I said to my friend, "That's Jocko. Oh my God, that's Jocko." And I've talked to Alfonso a few times about it. He told me, "Oh, Jocko hung out with us all day and it was great." And then, he went to the club, and the rest of that story.
Yeah.
But since I moved, I hadn't been to Jocko Pastorius Park. I've been back down to Miami, or to Florida and Miami, a few times, but he lived in Fort Lauderdale, and I remember
Yep.
going to his house and jamming with him in his living room and hanging out. It was just
Nice.
incredible experiences. When I get back to your gear, did I see that you play some Tech 21 stuff also?
Yeah, I've still got some of the Tech 21 stuff. What's funny, what I've been just in love with here lately, is the Studio Q preamp. I wanted something a little bit different than just the straight, Sans amp, something like that. And I tried one of these and ended up getting two, because, one of the things I do a lot down here just to actually play out is I've gotten heavily involved in playing in my church, kind of doing the interim band leader type thing. So, I'll have two basses set up with those, and that's a great little preamp.
All their stuff is great. Most people say, "Yeah, I use the Sans amp." So it's a good reminder to everybody that Tech 21 makes more than just the Sans amp. Great company,
Yeah,
great.
I like this just because it reminded me of some of the consoles when I was in Nashville, because it's basically is a channel strip off of a console. So, I'm usually that, because I want a little bit more tweakability. I really like to get in there and monkey around with the mid range. So
It sounds like such an opportunity for some genuine creativity.
and that's where I'm living right now. I've reached a point where I'm not obsessed with career. It's funny going back and looking at that interview we did before. I was all immersed in everything, keeping things going. Coming down here and really kind of downshifting a lot. I'm back to just creating. If it doesn't call to me, I don't do it. And it's because of that, the quality of my work, I think, is better than it's ever been.
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy for you. I want to touch on something we talked about last time, and something you touched on a couple times this time. For Bass Players Only is a bass instruction site, and you mentioned my over 50 article. I started writing. Almost all of my blogs are for old rockers, as I referenced at the beginning. That's who's coming to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. That's men mostly, some women, but mostly men in their 50s, 60s, 70s, not necessarily career bound. They're just, they just want to play the bass. They've got some time to do it now. They want to play some classic rock riffs with their buddies, or maybe some
Love it.
blues shuffles, or some walking bass lines. And as you also pointed out, what happens when you're 50s, 60s, 70s, arthritis, tendonitis, surgery, maybe sore hands and neck and back and that whole thing. So the reason I mention all that is to give you some context. Now that you have an idea of most of the people that are coming to ForBassPlayersOnly.com to learn bass, what advice do you have for those people as far as learning bass? What do you think they should be thinking about? What do you think is important for them?
Well, I'm learning more and more postures I should have paid a lot more attention to. But I think it goes into the same thing I'm doing with my career. Make sure you're having fun at it. It's especially the older we get, the less BS we're going to put up with. We don't want to get sidetracked with stuff. So keep the joy in it. I think is a huge, huge thing for all of us. It's funny, I mentioned to you prior that, we're doing this before I have a lesson, and my students, exactly what we're talking about. He's late 60s. He's been playing in South Florida forever, but just wanted to improve his skills, or take what he's been doing and, okay, what can we do to hone it? And what have I been doing wrong for 40 years? What have I been doing right? And the good part with anybody, I think, older is just, if you're wanting to improve other than just jamming and have fun, really sit down and think about it, because luckily we have a little bit more time. It's just, what do I really want to work on? What do I really want to improve on? And then, don't worry about, I mean, you can hear it in this record. I'm not playing a million notes anymore. You go play my first record, I am. There's a lot to be said musically for those of us when we reach that age where we don't have anything to prove. So I think it'll be good just for people not to forget that and have fun.
That's great. I love that. I think you hit it on the head. I don't even have any follow-up question about that. Unless you have more to say, I think what you said was...
No, all I can say on top of that is arthritis sucks, and so does degenerative discs. So, yeah.
Oh, they say, and please, I'm not dispensing medical advice and, consult a professional, but I've been told that with my arthritis, it's good to move the muscles and the bones, yep, get them going. So,
yeah, luckily for me, it's not my hands. I fell off a stage years ago, and it's results from that with my hip. So it's like, I know there'll be a replacement eventually, but I'm fighting it tooth and nail and doing just like you're saying, getting up and doing the work, get up, move, do your thing.
What about the future? Is there anything else that you haven't already mentioned? Either something within the works or something you've always wanted to do but never did, notwithstanding your downshifting and doing it just for fun and enjoyment?
That's a great question, just for the fact that, before I kind of resurfaced doing this, I kind of thought I was done. So it's like, I think I'm just, at this point, I'm more just eyes open. This relationship with these artists, where it's going, seeing already, the album's been out a week and a half, and I'm watching, some of the stats and everything already, and people are listening. So I'm like, I'm excited because there feels to be a resurgence coming, and especially when people like Michael are, giving me their thumbs up of, great project. There's a lot of people in the industry that are like, dude, you nailed this. And I'm like, okay, I wasn't planning on it. I just wanted to make a good record. So I just want to see what happens next, whether that's guesting on another record, whether I'm jumping into another one of mine soon, who knows? I'm sure I'll get more involved with TV and film. I'm still dabbling in that a little bit. Luckily I had a documentary last year that actually won the Emmy that I had 2 songs in. So, I'm still around.
What was it?
It was called Songbirds. It was on about the Guitar Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Wow. Good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was, and it was funny. That was a fluke, because it was the director ended up calling me. The composer had flaked, and he needed to finish the film and needed 2 more cues. And I threw in 2 songs I actually had in my library. And it was like quickest, easiest money I've ever made. And then I get a text, "Hey man, by the way, it won the Emmy." I'm like, what? How's that work?
That's amazing. Good for you. Well, my signature sign-off question is, what would you be if you weren't a bass player, something outside of music? And you can interpret that any way you want in light of everything we've been talking about for half an hour here, but take a shot at it.
Well, I'm about to say I'm 60% there, if not closer at this point. I'd say beach bum.
Yeah.
Luckily the ocean's a mile away and I get to enjoy it. So I'm feeling pretty blessed these days. It's a much different spot than I was. It definitely wasn't bad the last time we talked. Things were humming, but I'm very kind of pleased. So I just kind of want to keep cruising and see what happens next. And That Beach Bum thing sounds pretty darn good.
It sure does. Well, congratulations on everything. It's so great to see you so happy and relaxed and looking forward to taking it as it comes, whatever that may be. So,
Amen.
yeah. Well, there you go. Thanks so much for joining us, Sean. It's always great getting together. And like I said before, even though you think you're retired, you're really not. So I know there's
My wife gives me a hard time about that now. So
there's going to be more to talk about. So let's get together again in the not too distant future. I'm sure our audience would love to hear what you're up to.
you got it. Sounds good.
Thanks so much. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com, the place where all the old rockers who've still got it in them can learn bass and have a lot of fun doing it. Only at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. We'll see you all next week. In the meantime, let's play bass.